Welcome to my channel on the best of fantasy. Today I'm doing something a little bit different. I'm going to be doing a reading of a poem from Steven Erikson's The Bonehunters. So I decided to do this for several reasons. One, I've been inspired by my good friend A.P. Canavan, who has been doing some wonderful close readings of prologues from the various books of the Malazan Book of the Fallen. I'm also doing it because I love Steven Erikson's poetry. I'm a big fan, of course, of his prose, and I've spoken about it many times, but I also love the many poems that he has included, mostly as epigraphs in the Malazan Book of the Fallen. And I do think that these poems add a lot to my reading of the Malazan Book of the Fallen. So I'm going to do a reading of one of the poems. I happen to be reading The Bonehunters right now, and I'm going to do a reading of a poem from the very beginning. It is the epigraph to the prologue. So I do believe that, of course, an epigraph is naturally a hint as to the theme that is going to be coming in the prose that follows. That is what epigraphs are for. So Erikson is most certainly doing that. He is cluing us in as to the theme that we could be looking out for. So that is one reason to pay attention to the poems in the Malazan Book of the Fallen. Personally, what I like to do is I like to read the poem first and then read the chapter or the prologue or whatever it might be that follows, and then go back and read the poem again, because I catch things that I didn't get the first time around. So they actually feed each other that way. The poem tells us what to look for in the prose that follows, but also going back to the poem after reading the prose can enrich your experience of the poem as well, which is very much worthwhile as a literary experience itself. Like I said, I really enjoy Steven Erikson's poems. So and another thing about these poems is, in addition to being epigraphs, they function, there are metaphors within many of the poems, but the poem itself becomes a metaphor, in a sense, for the chapter. And another thing I love about these poems is their, let's see, AP, I'll try to use this word correctly, their extra diegetic nature that they add to the world of the Malazan Book of the Fallen, that they give us layers, that they give us a sense that there is a world behind the story. So it's just wonderful for so many different reasons that Erikson has included these poems. Not all the epigraphs are poems, but a good many of them are, and I enjoy them thoroughly. So I think let's get started. What I'm going to do here is I'm going to share my screen. I have this poem, the poem in question, and you should be able to see that now. It is called The Age Descending, and it is by Torbora Thethena. I'm not sure if I'm saying that correctly. I don't think this is the name of a person who ever comes up again. I think this is a one-time mention of Torbora. So the idea probably being that this is a person from a long time ago. This is a person who wrote this poem about some forgotten age. It's not exactly clear. There's no context given other than Erikson gives us the title of the poem and gives us the name of the poet, and that's it. We don't really know where this poem came from, and that is entirely appropriate because of the nature of this poem and the message that I think it conveys. So, and I think you'll see what I mean. First thing, though, I want to do is to just read through it, give it a quick read. It's not a very long poem. And then we'll go back and do a close reading of this poem. And hopefully by the end of this reading, I will have persuaded some of you that it is really worthwhile to pause and take time to read the poems carefully, because they really do enrich the reading experience. So let's give a quick read to The Age Descending by Torbora Thethena. For all that is made real in this age descending, where heroes leave naught but the iron ring of their names, from bardic throats I stand in this silent heart, yearning the fading beat of lives fallen to dust. And a sifting whisper proclaims glory's passing as the songs fail in dwindling echoes. For all that is made real, the chambers and halls yawn empty to my cries. For someone must, give answer. Give answer to all of this, someone. Okay, so that is the poem. Now I want to do kind of a line by line analysis, but something that immediately leaps out is that I think it's fairly apparent that what we have here is a kind of ubi sunt poem. And ubi sunt, the Latin for where are they? And this is a common type of poem that you would see in many older cultures. The idea being that there is an age that has passed, and it is a bit of a lament. It is a lament for the past, for what has come before and has now disappeared and gone. And it is, in a sense, not just a lament for the past, but a recognition that the present will one day be the past as well. So it's a bit melancholy, you could say. So this is an ubi sunt poem, and I said, you find them in very, very many traditions. There are Latin poems, and the ones that I'm most familiar with would be the Old English ubi sunt poems. Like there's lots of ubi sunt moments in Beowulf, for example, or one of my favorites is The Wanderer. This is from the Exeter book, and I'll just read a quick passage from The Wanderer in Old English. Where kom merd, where kom mago, where kom mathum giva, where kom simple gesetu, where zinden sella treamus, e alla bercht buna, e alla birn wiga, e alla theodnis trim, hu se thrag jewat, den ap onder nichthelm, so he noara. So I'll translate that quickly for you. That's the Old English. So it means something like, where has the steed gone? Where the kinsman? Where the treasure giver? Where is the feasting place? Where the hall joys? Alas for the bright cup. Alas, the mailed warrior. Alas, the prince's glory. How that time has departed, darkened under night's shadow, as if it never were. So that's kind of the gist of it. That's what an ubi sunt poem is like. It's a lament for what has passed, the ephemeral, the fleeting nature of life. And this is what we have here, I think, to some degree in The Age Descending. Now, I love how the title of the poem, which, by the way, in the book, in the Bonehunters itself, and in all of the epigraphs, Erikson will give the title and the name of the poet if it's known after the poem. But I like to read the title first, because sometimes the title is a big hint about what's coming. It tells us what to look for, just as the poem tells us what to look for thematically in the chapter or prologue to follow. The title can be a big hint about the theme of the poem as well. So I like to skip to the title and then go back and read the poem. So I put the title up there first. And the name of the fictional poet, of course, the poet is Stephen Erikson, who is posing here as Torbora Fethena. And so The Age Descending, and it's so wonderful how the poem itself mimics the idea of descent. And you see, it, just visually, you can see the poem gets thinner and thinner and thinner as it is dwindling. So the lines themselves, dwindling is a word used in the poem, the lines themselves dwindle. And so there's a mimicry of the whole theme of the poem in the layout of the poems, which is very cleverly done. And it is, again, it fits in with the whole, here's the theme, I'm giving you a hint about what's coming. By the way, too, I'm not going to give any spoilers for the Bonehunters other than just reading this poem, but until the very end of this video, I will just briefly mention how thematically I think the poem points out what's following in the prologue and in the book to come. So let's look at the first line. For all that is made real, and maybe even include this second line, in this age descending, because that's the title of the poem, The Age Descending. What does that mean? How does an age descend? And you get this sense of fleetingness. You get this sense of disintegration. You get this sense that things are falling apart, to quote another great poem by Yeats. So yeah, the idea of that things fall apart, we're coming to a time when the age is succumbing to some kind of chaos, to disease, to war, whatever it is that might be affecting things and making things fall apart. So for all that is made real, and there's this question here already posed in a sense in the beginning, What is he talking about? What is the, or she, I don't know the gender of the poet, but what are we talking about here? What is being made real? For all that is made real in this age. So in other words, if something is real, then there's a point of contrast here. There is something that is not real. And what might that be? Well, if we read on a bit, I think we'll find out. So for all that is made real in this age, descending where heroes leave not but the iron ring of their names from bardic throats. Aha, so here's the point of contrast. So we sing songs, and this, by the way, is wonderful on many levels. So you have words like not and bardic and that sort of thing, which hint that this is a very old poem. If it were a more, if Erikson were going for a modern feel, he would have words instead of not, he would have nothing. But not has a more ancient connotation, at least to these American ears, it does. And bardic as well points to an old, perhaps even lost culture, maybe an oral formulaic culture at one point. So yeah, paying attention to the connotations of the words here. So the heroes, what the bards say about the heroes. So we've already had a hint here that what the bards say about the heroes isn't quite truth. Okay, so it isn't necessarily real. Bards, it's part of their job, isn't it? The bards are supposed to make the heroes look really good. The bards are supposed to sing the praises and include the heroes in the formulaic nature of describing heroes. I mean, when you sing the ancient songs, you plug the hero right into the tradition, and therefore the hero, the person, the real person, if there is one, loses any sense of individuality and becomes what we conceive of as the archetype or the trope of the hero. So bards lie, in other words, in a sense. So for all that is made real in this age descending where heroes leave not but the iron ring of their names from bardic throats. Isn't that a great line? The iron ring of their names. Iron ring makes you think of, hero perhaps unsheathing his sword or her sword, and perhaps the sword clashing on the iron boss of a shield. And so a very martial tone to it, okay? Even as it's being undercut by the idea that it isn't quite real, that what we're talking about here is an idealization of the past. So you have the iron ring of their names from bardic throats. I stand in this silent heart, yearning the fading beat of lives fallen to dust. Okay, let's stop there. That's a real contrast with this brief conjuring of the martial past, when you can almost hear the echoes of these battles and the bards singing the praises of the heroes, but somehow all of that has faded. Somehow all that isn't quite real. There's a recognition, not only of its fleetingness, but the fact that we kind of made it up in the first place, right? So the speaker of the poem, this I, we don't know if it's Torbora or someone else, but this I is standing in this silent heart where you don't hear the bards singing, right? The lie has been given here, that you don't hear the bards singing in this fading heart, the silent heart, yearning the fading beat. So I love that we have a slightly ungrammatical construction here. It leaves a bit of ambiguity, which is wonderful. It's absolutely suggestive. And by the way, this is the one thing that I think a lot of times when people read poems, they read them as if they're puzzles that have to be solved with the correct answer. That to me is a good way to kill a poem. So you don't want to fossilize it. Poems are wonderful because they suggest, and there can be many possible valid interpretations. So I like to talk about what a poem makes me think about. And here, this poem has made me think about the silence and the lack of these old martial songs. And there's a yearning for that, right? So the I of the present, even though the I recognizes the lie, recognizes that the past has fallen away, at the same time, there is this yearning for this beat. So of lives fallen to dust, there you go, the yearning for the past, the Ubi Sunt theme. loud and clear. And the sifting whisper, I have to pause there. Isn't that just lovely? The sifting whisper. And you have the, not exactly alliteration, but the repetition of the sound, which imitates the idea that is being put forward here, this whisper, right? So it proclaims glory's passing. So normally when you think of glory and martial poems, you think of something loud, but this is a sifting whisper. This is something that is fading. And we're talking about not glory, but glory's passing, right? So this is a thing of the past. As songs fail in dwindling echoes. Once again, reinforcing this idea of the song no longer being as inspiring as it was, because these things are faded. These things are disappearing. They are ephemeral, they are fleeting. And even as the song is fading and dwindling, the lines have been dwindling as well, once again, imitating that idea. For all that is made real, and we have a repetition here of the first line. So we've gone back, we've gone back to this beginning concept here, and we're continuing with it with, for all that is made real, the chambers and halls yawn empty to my cries. It's a lot like that poem that I read in Old English about the empty halls, right? And a hall, of course, the connotation of the word hall is, once again, has a more old-time, ancient sort of feel to it, and perhaps martial as well, the hall where the warriors would gather and drink mead and get together and all of that. Well, now the hall is empty, right? The halls, the chambers and halls yawn empty to my cries. And again, the word cry, filled with connotation, right? So not yawn empty to my voice, or not yawn empty to my screams, or the word cry has more pathos to it, perhaps. A very appropriate word there. It has a connotation of mourning to it. Once again, reinforcing this idea of the fading of the past, right? Which is slipping away like dust between our fingers. For someone must give answer, give answer. And that's a beautiful example of how repetition can add poignancy, can add emotion to a moment in a poem. And it's very effective there. And even as it's getting shorter and shorter. So give answer, give answer. And it's like an echo, the echoes that we were talking about before, the dwindling echoes. So I just love how these lines reinforce each other. It's just a beautiful meditation. For someone must give answer to all of this, someone. And we end on that single lonely word, which is an echo of the loneliness of the speaker, looking back on the past and what has fallen away and what has been lost. And what is all of this? Give answer to all of this, right? There's this emotional weight here. It's as if the speaker is pleading for someone to explain the significance of all of this loss, right? All of whatever has been lost, whatever is in the past is gone. And the speaker is looking for some kind of affirmation, some kind of meaning to this. The speaker is in a bit of an existential crisis here, feeling the loss of the past, and perhaps the loss of whatever had given meaning to the speaker's life. And the fact that this speaker, this poet, is someone unknown, that we only have this name appearing once in the entire series, that we don't know who Torbora Fethina was, adds additional poignancy to the poem and beauty to it. So what has this to do with the Bonehunters? Well, there's, and this is the part where if you haven't read the Bonehunters and you don't want any spoilers at all, these would be pretty light spoilers, frankly. But I'm going to mention how this relates briefly to the prologue that follows. And in the Bonehunters, so if you haven't read it and you don't want to hear anything about it at all, then thank you so much for listening to this. And I hope you will pay attention to the poems as you read the Malazan Book of the Fallen, because they are just so enriching. But yes, just very briefly, and then we're almost done. What is this to do with the prologue? So we have a scene in Khartoum that immediately follows. And Khartoum is a place that was different a few generations back before the Malazan Empire took over. And there are certain traditions of the past that have disappeared. There's a sense of fallenness, that Kartul isn't what it once was, that the power behind it has been extinguished. So there is this sense of, yes, Ubi Sunt is very much a part of the current atmosphere in Kartul. It is a place that has seen its best times, or have been behind it. And then you also have, in addition to the scene in Kartul, you have the nameless ones, the scene of them awakening this some kind of diverse demon thing that is sounding very nasty. And this is a being that has seen generations and generations, the first empire and all of that. So it's seen changes, it's seen ages come and go, and this sense of the weight of the past. Even though this creature is mad, it still remembers that there were all these, not just one past, but many pasts, of layers and layers. And so again, you get this sense of, yes, the poem is in the beginning a metaphor for what follows. And it's really kind of cool because it prepares us for the right sort of vibe that we're going to get in the prologue. And it's just brilliant. It's absolutely wonderful how the themes are hinted at there in the poem. And then, of course, you get a bit about Tarlac Veed as well. But you get this village where a certain character named Barathal lives, and he's not a native of that village, but everyone else is. And this village has seen better times. Okay, so this is a village that exists in a place that once upon a time was a thriving place. That the ecology of this place has drastically changed due to human intervention, due to human activity, and the environmental conditions that once upon a time made this place thrive disappeared due to human activity. And so it is, I think there are like 18 people left in this tiny village where some Tlanamas are appearing. So again, here you go. Here is Erikson connecting this poem to the present of the story and giving the present of the story a certain depth. And no, the Age Descending is not about necessarily 7 cities at all, but there is this thematic link. There is this tonal link that is so enriching and so beautiful. So just something that I deeply appreciate, that it prepares me, it puts me in the right mood. And then I go back and I read that poem and I think, Erikson, that's what you were up to. At least I see some of what you were up to there. So yeah, so that's my take on just this one tiny poem. And Erikson includes epigraphs for every chapter, many of them being poems, but they're all hints, thematic hints about what's coming. And I find them incredibly beautiful. So I do hope that this has been interesting for you guys, and that I have encouraged maybe some people to take a closer look to some of the poems. If you guys enjoyed this and you want me to do some more close readings of some poems, feel free to suggest some in the comment section. I would be delighted to. I love poetry personally. I don't know how popular it is on YouTube. Probably not very, but nevertheless, I love it. And I find poetry in fantasy to be so enriching. I'm a big fan of the poems. So I feel like if you skip over the poems, you're missing a big chunk of the experience. So that's my take anyway. But thank you so much. And I hope you've enjoyed this. And until next time.